This example is a continuation of example 4 from the previous section of section 8.1. And what we did for that problem was we had this data of these letter grades that this technology professor had given out. He had given out 60 grades. And what we did is we did a frequency distribution and a relative frequency distribution of that data. So this is it repeated right here. Of course, it's in a printed form, but we went ahead and we wrote it out in a previous example, in the previous section. But here it is right here. We have the letter grades of A, B, C, D, and F, a frequency of how often each one came up, and then, of course, the relative frequency, the percentage or proportion of how often each one occurred. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this data and we are going to make a frequency bar graph and a relative frequency bar graph. So we're going to take this listing here and we're going to make a pictorial representation via a bar graph of the same thing. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is put in a horizontal line. And again, you can see that I like to use graph paper. It makes everything nice and clean. That way, if there's a mistake or something that's a little ambiguous, it's easier to pinpoint it when everything is clean and crisp. It doesn't have to be perfect, but graphing paper certainly makes it a little easier to handle. And then, of course, I'm going to put a scaling up along here. Now, if you look right here, the tallest scaling I have is 29. So when I make my scaling, I don't have to go any higher than 29. So I'm going to go like this, all the way up to here. And I'm going to count this off by twos. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. And maybe I'll go up to 30 right there. Here we go. So then I can say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And this is 10 right here. 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, and then 30. I don't have to do anything more than that because the tallest bar is only going to go up to 29. So then all I have to do, now that I have my scaling here, my frequency distribution here, all I have to do is draw in the bars that represent each one of these letters. So I've got 7, so I'm going to go up 7. 2, 4, 6, 7. And here is a bar that represents the letter grades for A. B, we have 15. Here's 10, 12, 14, 15. And there we are for B. None of this has to be perfect, but it certainly is a lot cleaner than if I just did it freehand. So this graph paper certainly does help, and I certainly do endorse it. If you have any, or if you have some sort of ruled paper, it helps a lot as far as I'm concerned. So this is our tallest bar. This is going to go up to 29. And these are going to be our C grades. D, there's only 3. So 2, 3 right here. And then finally we have our Fs. There are 6. 2, 4, and 6. And there's our Fs. So now we have this distribution here, this frequency distribution, and this is what it looks like pictorially. So we could identify what's going on right away. It summarizes our data very well. I'm going to do the same thing for the relative frequency. So I'm just going to go ahead and put in my horizontal line here. But the difference between this graph and the one we're going to draw here is it's going to look exactly the same. It's the same data, so it shouldn't look any different. The only thing that's going to change is the scaling here. This first one represents a frequency. That's a number count. This scaling here is going to have to represent a percentage. And if you look right here for F, for a grade of F. That's 6 out of the 60, or that's 10%. So if this is F right here, if I mark it right here, that could be my 10%. That way this here would be 5%. So then here would be 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, and then of course we top out at 50. So I'm just going to go maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, and then 50. And we go ahead and put in our bars. 11.67%. Oh, here it is right here. %, that's our B's. There we go right here. Our C, that's 48.33%. That's our tallest bar. Our D's, that's 5%. So that'll go right up here. And then, of course, our F's, that's 10%. And that goes right here. And as you can see, the graphs are exactly the same except for the scaling. One represents a number count, and the other one represents a percentage or a relative frequency. And there you go.